Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and I'm back for my third match against Matt bearsfan092 Belden. We played a best of 3, and as you guys probably know, he won the first game, I won the second game, and they were both really close games. So this is game 3 in a best 2 of 3. I think it's important to understand the best 2 of 3 concept in VGC because it's actually really important. As you probably know, the top matches in VGC always end up being best 2 of 3 as top cut, which is basically the top elimination brackets of all VGC tournaments, live VGC tournaments, are best 2 of 3, which is a really different dynamic. So Matt, obviously a very accomplished VGC player, and this is actually good practice for me actually for best 2 of 3 because as I mentioned earlier, the World Championships is actually exclusively best 2 of 3 and all top cut tournaments at tournaments are best 2 of 3. So enough of that, let's get right into it. I have Aerodactyl, Rotom, Charizard, and Ferrothorn, the same 4 I brought the last 2 matches. Matt's going to change it up this time. He brought Gourgeist the previous 2 times, but this time he's actually going to bring Scizor. In both games 1 and 2, Gourgeist was KO'd right away by my Charizard, and so even though Scizor is also KO'd by that Charizard, it's going to offer a bit more offensive pressure because Gourgeist actually wasn't able to do very much the previous 2 games. So that's an adjustment that you often see in best 2 of 3, opponents bringing different Pokemon. I'm going to go with the same lead I went with both times with the Aerodactyl and Rotom Wash, and he's going to lead with Tyranitar and Rotom Wash, which is by far his best lead, I think, of the 3 games. I anticipate the Protect on Tyranitar, I think, for the 3rd game in a row, which is what he does. Aerodactyl going for the Tailwind right again, so really all 3 battles kind of starting the same way as I get the Tailwind off. This time, however, I actually do Will-O-Wisp the Tyranitar because seeing how he didn't protect he protected both previous games. I said, this time maybe he won't protect, but he did. So not the best of turns there as he goes for a Thunderbolt onto my Aerodactyl, which hangs on with just 40 HP. Here the Tyranitar is going to switch out into Scrafty, and once again a good switch because Scrafty is just annoying to deal with, gets the Intimidate off. And Aerodactyl is really useless in this matchup besides setting up Tailwind, but the Tailwind is essential for putting pressure on. I actually anticipate a switch out into Salamence, which is why I went for the Ice Fang, but he plays that nicely as he just goes into his Scrafty. I actually did go for the Will-O-Wisp onto the Tyranitar too. Unfortunately, it's going to miss the Scrafty switch, and I really needed that one to hit, so I was kind of frustrated after that. But of course, when you play Pokemon and when you deal with Will-O-Wisp, you're going to have to deal with that kind of luck, so, just shrug it off and don't let it affect your future games, or future turns. Here, I want to conserve Aerodactyl to set up Tailwind for the future, so I'm actually going to switch it into Ferrothorn, which has a really good matchup against both Scrafty and Rotom Wash, despite Scrafty having the super effective Drain Punch. It's still a good Pokemon to bring out at this time. He's actually going to withdraw his Rotom Wash into Tyranitar, which I'm perfectly happy to see. And I actually have a really good matchup against this entire team with Ferrothorn, especially because he doesn't have Gourgeist. So while he made a good adjustment not bringing Gourgeist, it actually helps me more with the with my Ferrothorn. Since he did make a nice play, he faked out the Rotom Wash there. I didn't get to do anything, but getting in Ferrothorn was the main priority, and that's huge that I did get it in. He's actually going to switch out Scrafty here, which makes perfect sense because you want to conserve that Intimidate back into his Rotom Wash. His Tyranitar does go for a Protect, and I wanted to predict this. I nearly Power Whipped and Thunderbolted the Scrafty. I'm not sure if I actually did that because this is my first time watching the battle in a long time. But I actually went for the Leech Seed, right, instead of the Power Whip, anticipating something like a Salamence to switch in. But he actually did just go into the Rotom Wash, but I'm fine because Leech Seed is always good to get off, as now Rotom Wash is going to be taking damage from that Sand and Leech Seed. And I'm not scared of Rotom Wash because I do have a Lumberry to blow off that burn. Ferrothorn is a really nice counter to Rotom Wash if you do carry that Lumberry, even without the Lumberry, but the Lumberry makes it so that Power Whip's a one-hit KO. Tailwind's going to go out here, but I'm okay with that. I don't really need Tailwind at this point. Tyranitar's going to switch out, this time going into Scizor, and Scizor is the new Pokemon in this, but I'm actually fine with that. It doesn't give me very much trouble. And I anticipate the switch out, so I go for the Thunderbolt. He Thunderbolts with his Rotom Wash, going to bring me down to 24 HP, and I'm going to get the Leech Seed off onto his Scizor as well. So this is why I'm happy he actually brought Scizor instead of Gourgeist, because the Gourgeist at this point would resist the Thunderbolt, and Leech Seed would not work against it. So once I saw Scizor, I was like, okay, this battle is actually going to be better than I thought it was. He actually opted to not bring out Salamence either, and so Ferrothorn, like I said, has a very good matchup against his entire team, and he knows that. He knows he's going to have to play around that. Here he switches Scizor, which is a very good play because Scizor does basically nothing at this point, especially when you're under half health and you're Leech Seeded. So he's going to switch off into Scrafty to get more Intimidates off. I anticipate this switch. I go for the Hydro Pump onto the slot, and it's going to do a decent amount. Of course, that Scrafty is really bulky. His Rotom Wash is going to knock me out with a Thunderbolt, but that's fine. Rotom Wash, it's done its job. See, it stuck around and did a lot of damage to everything. I did go for the Power Whip here onto the Rotom Wash because I needed the KO there, and I fortunately get it as Power Whip does not miss, and that's good because Rotom Wash can give me some trouble if he gets 2 burns off with Will-O-Wisp, but I eliminated that right away. So I'm going to bring in Aerodactyl here as he brings in his Tyranitar, resetting up the sand. Of course, I do need to conserve my Scrafty, and Scrafty does have Drain Punch, which is super effective, and Crunch, since Steel-type does not resist Dark anymore, he could, potentially double target me, but he's going to actually switch his Tyranitar back out into Scizor, which is kind of a surprising play, but it's kind of a play you can often see in VGC. People bring out a Pokemon specifically to kind of bait, attack, and then switch out. I do go for the Tailwind here as Scrafty goes for a Drain Punch onto that Ferrothorn, and you see here it's going to do a lot of damage, but not enough to actually be a 2-hit KO, so I'm perfectly fine with that. Brings me down to around 70, he heals back to around 70%, but of course Iron Barbs is going to do some damage here. I do predict, actually I didn't really predict the switch, I guess, but I did not want to attack, so Leech Seed would seem like my best option there, because once I get 2 Leech Seeds off on both Pokemon, Ferrothorn's just healing back so much every turn. So Ferrothorn's going to take some from this Scizor, as Scizor basically has done nothing in this game yet, so I'm really glad he brought Scizor instead of Gourgeist. But that Scrafty actually, does not have Leech Seed, so Ferrothorn here just goes for the Protected Heal more, and I'm going to go for a Rock Slide. He surprisingly doesn't go for a Bullet Punch with this Scizor. Not really sure why, but I'm okay with that. But clearly, he acknowledges how big of a threat my Ferrothorn is, and so playing a bit more aggressively targeting my Ferrothorn, but I kind of anticipated that just in case, so I did go for the Protect onto Ferrothorn, and I'm actually going to knock out that Scizor. So that in the course of the game, Scizor did basically nothing, so making this game a lot easier than the previous two, because Gourgeist was a lot more annoying to KO and deal with. So he's going to bring out his Tyranitar now and have KO'd 2 of his Pokemon, which is good because now once he Mega Evolves, the weather is basically going to allow me to get my Charizard and the Sun up. I'm going to Rock Slide here. It's going to do a lot to that Tyranitar with the critical hit and flinch it. And I'm going to get a double flinch here, and that's going to basically seal the game up for me because he's not going to be able to do anything. So that was a really fortunate turn. Critical hit not really needed, and even if I just got 1 flinch, I think I would have been able to take it, but the second flinch was just too much. I anticipate like he probably would have maybe double targeted my Ferrothorn, but I think my Ferrothorn was bulky enough to survive 2 attacks from both of his sides. So honestly, the whole point of me in this game was to just save that Ferrothorn until the very end. So by making sure I did that, by seeing like this time he didn't have anything like it really threatened Ferrothorn, I kind of assessed that correctly, which is perfectly fine. As Scrafty goes for, I double protect. He makes a good play, kind of his only play, Dragon Dancing with Tyranitar to try to close this game out. But Scrafty's going to take some more damage from the sand, and it's going to take damage from Leech Seed, resulting in a KO. So now once again it's Ferrothorn against a Tyranitar. Even 1 versus 1 Ferrothorn wins this, but with the Aerodactyl on its side, it's going to be even easier. And of course, now that Tailwind peters out, he's going to Mega Evolve into Tyranitar, kind of just going for some flinches at this point. And if he actually could pull this game through if he flinched me a couple of times, because Charizard is my last Pokemon. And I go for a double protect on Aerodactyl, it doesn't really matter. He actually plays this pretty correctly, goes for the Crunch onto Ferrothorn, and you see there, it does 100 damage, so even with the critical hit, it would not have been a KO. Because I would have survived, but he played that correctly, and I'm going to be able to pick up the KO onto Tyranitar with the Gyro Ball. So I got really lucky with the double Rock Slide flinch there. But, in the previous 2 games, I had been fishing for Rock Slide flinches. I never got one, so it was good to see it finally work. Anyway, that's it for today's battle, guys. Rate, comment, subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. 300 likes is always the goal for these battle videos, and I'll see you next time. Peace.